Quarantine. The world is ending. I need to get a start to my life. I just graduated from a 2-year film program, but the industry is frozen. I haven't made a video in a year and a half. Where have I been? I've been here, doing other stuff, making things, creating new stuff, but recently I haven't had much to do. I'm sure if I started looking, I'd find something. What's that music? I recognize it. I've heard it, but I've never really gotten to know it. Until now. Over the past month, I've finally gotten into one of the major pop culture franchises that I was never really invested in, and that's Halo. The hype for these games when they came out was massive. Halo 2 became the best-selling entertainment thing ever at the time. But me, I was 4, so I had other things to worry about, like taxes. And also I had a PlayStation. That was the go-to gaming console here, and it'll probably remain that way going into the next gen. But recently something changed. I watched the Halo Infinite gameplay reveal and thought, this looks like fun, but I'm not sure if I'll ever really be able to play it, because I'm not an Xbox guy. Oh wait! Things coming on Steam? Hell yeah, now I'm interested. Then I had this major interest in Halo for whatever reason, but Infinite wasn't coming out for a while, and now it's not coming out for a longer while. But I found the Master Chief Collection on Steam. 4 games currently available, 3 of them being the original Halo trilogy developed by Bungie. So, naturally, I bought it, lol, and have since played all 4 available games, and it was pretty obvious which one I was gonna start with. Coming out in 2001, Halo was revolutionary. It defined so much of what modern console shooters have become. I'm a big Transformers guy, so I know the game director of War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron was a big fan of Halo.
Getting into, I love Halo, right? Getting into a Warthog is really different than becoming a Jeep whenever you want to. And
because you can place Warthogs in certain places, but you can
control.
do them
and that's
whenever you
no
want.
knock on Halo, right? But that's just our game.
And in playing these games, there's so much in Halo that was carried over into those Transformers games. No one else cares about that but me, but that's okay. As someone who's only just gotten into this series, it was interesting to see the beginning of a lot of console shooter tropes that we've gotten accustomed to since. Especially someone like me who's played Destiny a lot, seeing where a lot of the mechanics and visual style originated with the Halo games. But not only that, I was also experiencing this story for the first time. I had no real idea what the story was about until now. I knew there was a giant ring, and there was Master Chief with his trusty AI Cortana, and they were fighting the Covenant. And there was this other thing called the Flood, maybe, but I didn't know what that was. I didn't really know anything about this series aside from some basic visuals. I guess I should say spoilers for the Halo original trilogy. Any of the other ones you're safe, but spoilers for these 3. Who am I kidding? This is a 20-year-old game. We open on the Pillar of Autumn, a UNSC ship that's attempting to escape the Covenant, if only temporarily, and it crashes on a Halo ring. Installation 04 to be precise. Master Chief is woken up and becomes the player character as you fight Covenant in the ship. Now I know this point has been talked to death, but it really is quite genius how this game opens up in confined hallways and corridors like the other console shooters at the time. But then it opens up to this massive world, and even now to this day you're left in awe of the scale of the Halo. It's really quite impressive that that element has stood the test of time. But there's more to the ring than just being big. We're also discovering these weird structures and other anomalies across the ring, adding to the mystery. What is this thing? I was starting to get really sucked into the mystery. What is this ring? What does it do? Why is it here? About halfway through the story, there's this mysterious level where you're hearing over the radio and then seeing footage that indicates a new type of enemy. Something that isn't Covenant, and it isn't human. This reveal is actually quite cool, and I found myself getting sucked into this mystery too. As a first-time player, I was understanding what really got people's attention with this game back in the day. But what is this mysterious new foe? Well, it's the Flood. These weird parasitic space barnacles that corrupt everything they can find, and they consume life and refuel themselves. It's really quite something. However, I gotta admit, fighting them sucks real bad. I mean, at first I didn't mind them, but as they keep showing up throughout the second half of the game, they become far more of a chore to fight than the Covenant, who's far more fun. I don't know if it's because you can one-shot them with a shotgun, or if it's because they don't stop coming and you just have to keep shooting them until you die, but I don't enjoy these guys, I'm gonna be honest. The concept of the Flood is really cool, but once you get to the library, you start to hate fighting them. The library is the worst mission in the game. It's tedious, endless, and you're constantly fighting the Flood, and it's just not very fun. It's really quite rough for multiple reasons. Firstly, you're walking through the same hallways again and again, fighting hordes and hordes of the Flood. Now, I suck at video games, so it's no surprise that I died a lot during this section. Thankfully though, once you finish that level, you're introduced to the real twist of the story, and that's that the Halo ring is designed with the express purpose of wiping out all life in the galaxy so that the Flood have no more food. I think I like this reveal more than the Flood reveal. This one got my ears perked up. I was immediately far more interested in the story at this point. We know what the ring is, why it's here, and something about who built it. But we can't activate it now, that'd be dumb, but we can't let the Flood escape either. So we need to travel to the crashed Pillar of Autumn and blow the reactor so that we destroy the ring. It's a pretty standard but effective final mission. There's a warthog run across the top of the ship as you barely escape as the ring explodes behind you. It's fun and exciting, if not a little rough because the Flood sucks. But as someone who had played this for the first time, I was interested, I was invested. The story of the ring was something that was interesting. The environmental storytelling was what kept me playing even through the rougher parts of the game. But part of the reason for being invested is the music and the voice acting. The audio of the game is fantastic and still holds up even on the original non-anniversary edition of the game. The music is classic and timeless, and it really supports the atmosphere the rest of the game is working with. It's really a credit to the score for maintaining the atmosphere despite all of the visual changes with the anniversary edition. I was getting pumped up and ready to go whenever the music would kick in. But all of this stuff has been building to the climax of the game, where we escape the Pillar of Autumn as it explodes, destroying the Halo ring and containing the Flood outbreak. We did it. We may have been the only ones who made it off that ring, but it happened. The ring is destroyed.
We did what we had to do for Earth. An entire Covenant armada obliterated, and the Flood. We had no choice. Halo. It's finished.
No. I think we're just getting started.
Immediately after booting up Halo 2 Anniversary, I noticed a massive upgrade from the first game. And not just because of the remastered cutscenes, which are awesome by the way. But while the first game took its time to really get me invested, Halo 2 takes no time at all. We're immediately shown this Covenant tribunal of sorts, and we're exploring the culture and the history of the Covenant like we were never shown in the previous game. All of a sudden the lore is greatly expanded in only a few minutes of cutscene, and also the anniversary visuals are a treat. Here, let's make a quick comparison between the two games real quick. Let's look at the same event shown in Halo 1 and Halo 2. So here's Halo 1, and this is Halo 2.
By the time I learned the demon's intent, there was nothing I could do.
It also helps that the voices are top-notch in this game. The Prophet of Truth has a super engaging voice. It makes you want to listen to every word he says. Makes him a really interesting villain.
Soon the great journey shall begin. But when it does, the weight of your heresy will stay your feet, and you shall be left behind.
Now this guy, Thel Vadamy, is played by Keith David, so there's a win there automatically. He's kind of the guy getting the blame for the Halo ring exploding. But all these great voice actors are playing immediately interesting characters that I just want to see more of. But soon we do see the Master Chief sporting new armor, and we see the expansion of the gameplay. Dual wielding is a feature, which is excellent, lots of fun. The enemies are as varied and exciting as ever, and we're shown a couple new weapons as well, which the variety of the weapons only expands as the game continues. Overall, I was immediately impressed with what Halo 2 Anniversary was offering, and then I saw the cutscene that showed Master Chief fly a bomb towards a Covenant ship and blowing it to hell. Like, that's just awesome.
Just one question. What if you miss?
I won't.
Like, man, this is my first time experiencing this story, and I'm already liking it way more than the first game. Another thing to mention is that the scale of this game is very impressive. I mentioned how seeing the Halo in the last game was kind of awe-inspiring, but this game does equally awe-inspiring moments of scale throughout the entire game, keeping it interesting. As an example, here's a moment where an entire city explodes. The biggest twist of the story I did not see coming, which is surprising because I'm on the internet and Halo is a very popular topic. Kinda feels like if I didn't know Darth Vader was Luke's father, despite it being a well-known fact. But after playing as the Chief for a couple hours, you're shown a cutscene with Thel Vadamy as he becomes the Arbiter, Covenant rank given to those with a mark of heresy or something. And we're following this guy, and I'm thinking they're going to cut back to the Chief. As interesting as this guy is, we're going to cut back to Master Chief. Or he's going to show up and we'll fight the Arbiter, and that'll be the next mission. I'm sure of it.
Warriors, prepare for combat!
What? No. What? We're playing as this guy? Okay, now that's cool. The biggest and most interesting twist in this game is that we play as the Arbiter, and we walk a mile in his shoes. The biggest modern comparison now is The Last of Us 2, but while that game divides the two playable characters into two halves of the story, this one is intercutting between the Chief and the Arbiter throughout. But what's interesting about playing as the Arbiter, though, is that we explore the Covenant and the Heretics and what their beliefs are, and their great journey. The great journey is definitely misguided because they think activating the Halo rings will bring them to godlike status, and we know, yeah, no, it causes a lot of death, that's what it does. But it's interesting playing as the Arbiter and watching as he and the other elites are slowly betrayed by the Prophets and the Brutes. And we watch as the Arbiter slowly realizes the truth of the Halo ring and how he's betrayed by the Brutes, and he realizes that the heretic he was assigned to kill, and did kill, was right all along, and that the Prophets were deceiving the Covenant. The Arbiter's story is one of betrayal, and I'm so glad it was explored in this game because it boosts so much more about what the Covenant is all about. God damn, this one's good. Meanwhile, the Chief and the UNSC find a second Halo ring, Installation 05. And there's a big level here that's pretty cool where we end up killing the Prophet of Regret by punching him real hard in the face. Then an entire Covenant super army shows up, and that's bad. Chief is then forced underwater where he's captured by a weird tentacle thing. Now the Chief and the Arbiter have reached their worst point, and they're finally united before the Gravemind, which is... what is that thing? It looks horrible. Get it off the screen. But also don't, because it looks really cool. What the hell? The Gravemind is a collective intelligence of the Flood, which are still not fun to fight in this game, even if they're handled a bit better this time around. But this worm thing, God, he's creepy and really cool. His deal is that he doesn't want the ring to activate because then he'll starve, so he sends the Arbiter and Master Chief on their own separate missions. So we follow the two of them through their individual missions, their own ways of stopping the ring from firing and stopping the Prophet of Truth. Master Chief's side follows him infiltrating the Covenant holy city High Charity as we pursue the Prophet of Truth across the ship. We learn of the impending activation of the ring, and to ensure its destruction, Cortana stays behind on the city. The environmental storytelling thrives in this section of the game. We're slowly watching as the Flood, and more importantly the Gravemind, take over High Charity, which is kinda nuts. But we learn that the Prophet of Truth is on this central Forerunner ship, and we eventually land on it as it launches away towards Earth.
After I'm through with Truth.
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
These are all iconic lines that I'm only learning about now. It's wild. Meanwhile, the Arbiter is trying to stop Tartarus, the head of the Brutes, as he intends to activate the ring. Eventually, we join forces with a couple Humies and stop the ring from firing. Woo! That's a relief, isn't it? We stop the ring. But this inadvertently sends a signal to the other rings, setting them into standby mode for remote activation. Now we're really in the thick of it. Everything's in peril. We're setting up this grand finale. I can already see the final mission in my head. We're gonna play as Master Chief, find the Prophet of Truth, kill him, and stop the rings from firing and destroying the galaxy. So we get this elaborate cutscene showing the Forerunner ship arriving on Earth with Master Chief on board. Alright, here we go.
Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
Alright, yeah, let's finish this fight. Hell yeah. Okay, here's a scene on High Charity where the Gravemind is fully taken over the city. It's all completely ruined, and Cortana is still there. Man, there's gonna be lots to resolve in this final mission, that's for sure. But I'm interested in this. This is cool.
I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.
Alright, we've cut to black, waiting for the loading screen to play the final level of Halo 2. What? No, that... Wait. What? No, that's how it ends? That... Oh my god, they did a cliffhanger. Halo 2 ends with a cliffhanger, with the promise of finishing the fight in the next game. No, that can't be it. Well, that is the end. That is the entire story of Halo 2. We're left on a cliffhanger. The Prophet of Truth is still out there with the ability to activate all of the rings, and Master Chief is on his ship. So, with the promise of finishing this fight in a future game, how do we finish this fight? Taking place almost immediately after the end of Halo 2, Halo 3 reunites the Chief and the Arbiter for one grand slam finale. And I gotta say, I was all in for this story. Everything's led to this, the final stand. We gotta destroy the Flood, we gotta kill the Prophet of Truth. It's all led to this. We gotta finish this fight, and I am pumped up. I can only imagine the hype back in 2007, waiting 3 years after the conclusion of Halo 2 for the finale. But here we are. Overall, the gameplay is the same as the previous two, but further perfected, with new big bosses like the Scarabs, which there was one of those in Halo 2, but it's done a lot better here. The Brutes are given a lot more personality this time around, with their own fighting style, vehicles, and weapons, which is a lot better than what they were in Halo 2, which was just being a bullet sponge that might charge at you eventually. This game is simply more of the Halo that people like. It's the continuation and conclusion to the story, and it's a pretty damn fine story. We open on Earth, as Truth is still on his Forerunner ship that he escaped in at the end of Halo 2. The Covenant attacks the human base, and we fight back, stopping their anti-air cannons and then stopping a flood outbreak on Earth. But Truth has activated something, sending him and the Covenant army somewhere else through a portal. So naturally, humanity follows them. On the other side is a look into more Forerunner technology, more of their history. It is known as the Ark, which was teased at the end of the last game. This is Installation 00. This is where we can remotely activate all of the Halo rings, and Truth is etching closer and closer to flicking the switch. Meanwhile, the Flood arrive on the Ark and the corrupted High Charity, and if we remember, Cortana is still there, and she's been haunting us for the entire game, her face flickering in our eyes, stopping us in our tracks as she says menacing and haunting dialogue. While maybe this happens too much, I think it helps to sell the fact that Master Chief isn't quite the same without her, and this just helps motivate us. You know, we gotta find Cortana, gotta get her back. This leads us into the final battle against the Flood and the Covenant, and I gotta say they went all out on the scale for this game. The Ark is ridiculously huge. The fights with the Scarabs are massive and awe-inspiring every time. There's also this moment where the Forward Unto Dawn flies right overhead, and it literally blew me away. In one of the final levels of the game, we're tasked with finding Truth. But during that, Miranda Keyes, in an attempt to stop the rings from firing because humans are the only ones that can activate them, dies. This puts more urgency as Johnson is forced to activate the Halo array. Now, this next bit might be one of my favorite sections in this entire trilogy, because in our crusade to kill Truth, the Flood side with us to stop the rings from firing.
Do not shoot, but listen. Let me lead you safely to our foe.
This just makes me feel invincible. It makes me feel like I'm this heroic Spartan that's gonna save everything. This is something this story does pretty well. It makes me feel powerful. It makes Master Chief feel important. And it might be because we instill fear in any enemy we encounter, but also we instill hope in any group of humans we come across too.
We got reinforcements, Marines!
But in a satisfying moment, the Arbiter kills Truth, ending what we know of the Covenant, destroying their leadership, and ending the Human Covenant War. But this fight isn't quite finished yet, because the Flood, now that they've gotten what they wanted, are turning against us.
We trade one villain for another.
So, we still gotta deal with the Flood, and more importantly, we have to save Cortana. Now, this next mission sees us infiltrating the corrupted High Charity as it's taken over by the Gravemind, and I don't like this mission much. I'm sure no one does, but it's fighting the Flood, and they still aren't great in this one. Hell, there's these new spider-like creatures that will not die no matter how many bullets you pump into them. And before someone says I'm using the wrong gun or something. But this mission's purpose is to find Cortana. She's somewhere in here, and she's losing control. She's not herself. We fight through the Flood, desperately trying to reach her, and eventually, we do.
You know me. When I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
Lucky me.
Whoa, we got Cortana back. After that cliffhanger at the end of Halo 2, I'm very satisfied with getting her back and fighting the last stretch of the game with her by our side. Now, the final mission is clear. We need to destroy the Flood. Thankfully for us, the Ark was creating a replacement for Installation 04. This time, Installation 08. We fight the Flood in a very familiar area, and we reach the Cartographer. And this is where we can activate the ring, where we can destroy the Flood. And this is going to be fine because the Ark is far away from the galaxy, meaning the galaxy won't be affected, but we'll destroy all of the Flood here and the Gravemind. But we realize that activating the ring in its incomplete state will destroy it. And while we're fine with this, it just won't do for 343 Guilty Spark, who we followed for this entire trilogy as he was the monitor of Installation 04, built with the express purpose of watching over the ring and getting someone to activate it if need be. But in learning that his new ring will be destroyed, he turns on us, killing Johnson, and in response we kill him, activating the ring. This leads to a final Warthog run where we swiftly drive towards the Forward Unto Dawn. We land on the ship, crashing on it. The Arbiter, who's been by our side for most of the story, gets into the bridge and flies the ship away. But we flash to white, not knowing what happened. But the Flood and the Ark have been destroyed. That's all we know. Many months later, a memorial is held by Lord Hood, commemorating the people who lost their lives in the last year of the war, and we realize that the front half of the Forward Unto Dawn made it to Earth with the Arbiter, but the back half, with Master Chief, is gone. Him and Cortana gave their lives for the end of the war.
You have my thanks for standing by him to the end. Hard to believe he's dead.
Were it so easy.
In deep space, the back half of the Forward Unto Dawn floats aimlessly. On board, Cortana and Master Chief. They're alive, but they're far away from anyone or anything. But they know they've won. And unlike the end of the first game, Master Chief admits that this is the end. And so he puts himself in a cryo tube, putting him back to where we met him at the start of the first game.
Wake me when you need me.
And that is the end. We have finished this fight. We have defeated the Covenant. We have defeated the Flood. It is over. The galaxy is now in a different place. The Arbiter and the Shipmaster will now create a new, better version of the Covenant, now aligned with humanity, and the galaxy will know peace. I really quite like this ending. It's satisfying. It's the big final concluding battle that gave me exactly what I was looking for after Halo 2. While maybe there weren't as many big twists in this one, it was still enjoyable, if not a little short. It's around 2.5 hours shorter than either of the previous games. But it makes you feel powerful. You are Master Chief, the ultimate soldier, and you can pull turrets off the ground and be amazing for a couple minutes. It's great. The Arbiter is as cool as ever here, although we don't play him this time around unless you're player 2 in co-op. Keith David really brings the character to life, and I just realized this in playing these games. Keith David played Barricade in Transformers the Game. Don't believe me?
Step aside, Autobot. The Allspark belongs to Megatron. The prophets have betrayed us.
Ironhide, can you lend some support?
Which, I should say that the voice talent overall in these games is fantastic. They each have their own personality and flair. Even the Chief is fun to see with his banter with Cortana, which, having that back in the last couple missions in this game is a welcome return. The music is also at its best this time around, with Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore bringing their A-game this time around, with the iconic piano tune that is carried over into the rest of the franchise. The tunes, the melodies, it all comes together in this massive conclusion to this big franchise. It's a satisfying end to the trilogy, a grand story that people have been experiencing since it began in 2001, and I've only just gotten onto the hype train. But I get it now, and it's so interesting seeing how so many tropes are pioneered through this trilogy. It'd be real easy to look back and say, oh, there are so many shooter cliches in these games, without knowing that this is where they originated, but it's been fun to see the evolution of the trilogy and how it perfected itself by the end. But now we can finally say, we have finished the fight. So now what? Well, Halo Reach is also on the Master Chief Collection, and I have played it, but I didn't think it needed to be included here. It's basically the Rogue One of the Halo universe, and yeah, I know Reach came first, but the comparisons are obvious. The next additions to the Master Chief Collection are Halo 3 ODST and Halo 4, which I'm looking forward to playing those as they release in preparation for the next game in the series. Halo Infinite looks like a lot of fun, despite the fact that it doesn't look like it's revolutionizing the industry like its predecessors, but it's returning to the core of the games and it looks like the original trilogy with a fresh coat of paint. Well, not entirely fresh, but you know what I mean. The music that's been released so far has gotten me interested in the soundtrack, and the trailers are all quite interesting. I don't really know much about the Banished or about Zeta Halo or any of that stuff, but I'm interested in the continuing future, and even if the future games aren't as good as these ones, we'll all still have these games, right? And now that they're on Steam, they'll be introduced to a new generation of fans like me who never played them originally. But that'll be the end of this video. Don't expect me to come back regularly, I just kinda wanted to put my thoughts on these games into a tiny little 5-minute video. So, I'm still dead. I just wanted to talk about Halo for a bit. I hope you all have a good time playing games and staying alive given that the world is in peril right now, except for New Zealand. Alright, well, I'm out. This is the end of my video on the Halo trilogy. Have a good night, everybody.